Hey, everybody. Good evening. Happy Tuesday evening. Hope everyone's doing well. And thank you again so much for joining me. I've really appreciated getting back to some of these live streams with you all. And we'll just give everybody a couple minutes to join, and then we'll jump right in. But for those of you already here, thank you so much for being a part of this. And today we're going to be discussing, again, the same topic we're going to do several times this week. It's how deconversion from Christianity changes us. So just give me a couple minutes here to let everyone in, and we'll jump right to it. And also, if anyone could just put a quick note, make sure you can hear me okay. I think I'm coming through loud and clear, but if I could have a confirmation, I'd really appreciate it. And we'll get started in about 1 minute. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. Appreciate it. All right, well, we're going to jump in here. Some more people hopefully will join us shortly. But we're going through a series for just a couple days called How Deconversion from Christianity Changes Us. We've got, at this point, I think about 7 episodes of this scheduled for the next few days. And I do hope it's encouraging to you. When I say encouraging, I don't mean to say that we're going to be talking about things that are all exciting or we're going to really feel warm and fluffy. Some of the topics are pretty intense or sad, but they're reflective. And we're just trying to sort of list out the things that change as we deconvert. Like, what is it that you go through? And some of the topics are a little bit lighter, and some of them are a little bit heavier. And I apologize if any of you are feeling down. The heavier topics are probably not what you need. But I'm trying to be exhaustive and just kind of go through the list of what are the things that change when we go through this experience. It's very, very transformative. So again, thank you so much, Ryan, for confirming. And Stephen, great to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us. But I do want to go through this because I think that as we really think through the different ways that this experience has affected us, it gives us the words to describe it, as well as the chance to say, wow, like, this is really a significant change. And I encourage you to list those things out. You know, some of them, you'd probably list the exact same things as me. Some of them, you'd word them differently, or you take it a different direction, and that's great. But, you know, find the words, find the way to say what has happened to you. Because we spend a lot of our time, I think most of our time on this channel, talking about what happened to us before that kept us tricked and brainwashed, and why it was so important to escape. But I think it's important at times to reflect on, like, what was that shift like? What were the things that were changing? So we're going to dig in here. The first one is sort of, I think it's a good one. It can be a little bit sad if you're thinking of it in a certain way, but I'm going to try to not make it too melancholy. But it makes us more circumspect about life. Deconversion does. It makes us more circumspect about life as we realize that death is likely to be a permanent thing, meaning you don't come back in heaven or hell or in a reincarnation state. It's most likely permanent, and that we are just evolved animals. We're not a special species on a transcendent level. We're just another species. And just like every other animal dies, and that's probably it for them, that's it for us too. I think it's important to talk through this because we really grieve the loss, at least I did. You grieve the loss of eternal life like you grieve the death of a parent. I talked a lot in my mind about that, and in my story when I shared it, about how it feels like you're having a funeral when you deconvert, because you're grieving your Heavenly Father, and arguably perhaps he's more important in your mind and your psychology than your human father, because you expect to have your human father for a while. You expect to have your Heavenly Father forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And so you grieve the loss of eternal life like you grieve the loss of a parent. You grieve the self that you were promised, that illusion of immortality that was given to you for your hope. And that grief that you go through, it can be a long process, but I think the beauty of it is, and I'm trying to, again, frame some of these things where they can be sad, but it gives you a chance to have a deeper reverence for this moment. You know, your body, your heartbeat, your life, your flesh, your family, your time. You appreciate it more and more. Hey, Susanna's here. Thank you so much, Susanna, for joining us. You appreciate your life more when you realize that this is probably it. And you begin to root yourself in your mortality, in a sense, and you find meaning in the finite. We aren't above nature, we're part of it. And we're stardust, as they say. We're sort of inhaling and exhaling this whole thing. But that process starts to become an inhale and exhale of wonder. We used to reserve that wonder for heaven, and I can't wait to see God's face. I can only imagine. But the inhale and exhale of life becomes this wonder for what we're part of. And again, to me, this one, it can kind of cut to the bone if you're not careful. Because for most of our lives, I wasn't just hoping for heaven. I don't think many of us were just hoping. We were counting on it. It wasn't like, oh, I hope I get there. It was like, that's my true home. That's everything. That's not just a prize. I hope I win that one. I hope I get the trophy. Like, that was everything. You're counting on it. You're banking on it. It's a promise that you ultimately never question. I mean, some people did question their salvation, but for Calvinists would get to the point where we would say, we're sure that God elected us, so we're not really concerned about that anymore. We know we're going there. God put us in the Lamb's Book of Life before time began, but we were raised with this assurance that death was not the end. It was just a beginning. It was the gateway. It was certainly the place where we would have this marvelous transformation. It was sort of like your reassignment. You're assigned here to earth temporarily as a testing ground, and your real reassignment, your permanent reassignment, is heaven. We weren't just believing generically there's probably life after death. We were promised it, and we had this certainty with the smiles of the pastor pounding the pulpit, of telling us, expounding what the book of Revelation meant, the streets of gold. And you weave in the altar calls and your testimony, like, I am going to be on the other side of the banks of Jordan. And you're conditioned to think that this is the absolute pinnacle of everything. Every setback that you have, every test, it's all sort of a rehearsal. And every longing, we talk about the longing of your heart, that's actually a longing for God. Every tragedy is just a building block to get your eyes more on God in time, and more importantly, in eternity. And so we prepared for it. We were like, as they say, a bride preparing for her wedding day. We wanted to be polished up and expectant, ignorant of the cost. Like, I don't care how much it costs. I just want to get married. I want to find my groom. I want to find my wedding day. I want the celebration. I want the party. And we knew that the moment we fell asleep at death, we'd wake up in glory. And we'd, I don't know if you've had the picture in your mind, but you'd be reclining on a cloud, perhaps. Golden streets, certainly, and jeweled streets around you. Reunion everywhere with your loved ones who had departed. Vindication, certainly, like, I'm vindicated. My faith was real. I knew it. Oh, thank God I took this path. This is so amazing. I'm here. I made it. And I'm secure now. I can't ever lose it. And we'd see Jesus face to face. That was our primary goal. Was, I want to see my Savior. I know that I can't really see Yahweh in the sense, his glory, he's different, but Jesus is the God man. And I can see him. I can touch the nail holes in his hands. I can see and fall at Jesus's feet, and maybe in a schmoozy sense, I can give him a hug and just say thank you so much, and really enjoy that moment forever. And we'd be reunited in a bigger sense again with our loved ones, with saints who'd gone before us. There'd be no more pain, no more goodbyes, no more death. It was just this sublime promise of continuity. This is forever and ever and ever. This is the comfort of this narrative. It is a permanent prize. And when deconversion begins, that whole structure collapses. And it might not implode loudly for all of us. It might feel like it's seeping out through the cracks, but eventually the scaffolding gets weakened and your doubts take over, and you have this disillusionment. And one day, you're driving your car, you're brushing your teeth, you're laying in bed staring at the ceiling, and it just hits you like a freight train. This might be it. This life, this body, this little teeny, fragile, flickering consciousness, there might be no heaven. There might be nothing. There's no welcome home waiting for you. There's no divine reunion. There's no tidy ending to this story of your life. or to the universe. It's just cessation. It's just the end. It's just silence, and whatever remains. You came from stardust, and you return to stardust, essentially. The only thing left is the memories of those who knew us, who are still alive for their short time left, and then decay for all of us, and dirt. And the finality of that really can't be softened. You can't just walk away and say, I'm just so glad I don't get to go to heaven. I mean, some people have told me, I really didn't want to live forever. And I really thought heaven could be really boring, because it's just, if you're thinking of this stuffy Presbyterian church or Episcopalian church where it's just like, we just stand there with our tight suits on and our ties up to our neck. We can barely breathe. We're overheated. We've been singing these same songs for 25 years. I mean, for Christ's sake, when is it going to end? Yeah, obviously that's going to be boring. But for those of us, I think, who had a little bit of a scope for the imagination to think about heaven and the beauties of it, it was truly devastating. It really was. And I know not everyone would say it that way, but for me, it was beyond devastating. It's like a trap door that's on the floor, and you stood on it, and it was secure for you for so long, and then it just opens up and bam, you fall through. It's not just a theological shift at that point. You could really call it like an existential bereavement. This is a hole in your mind. This is a rupture in your identity. This is like, again, a quiet funeral for your Heavenly Father, but really a funeral for your former self, and for your former beliefs, your former certainty, and your basically your former home. You felt like your real home was heaven, and you basically you didn't even watch it burn down. You realized it was never there. And you begin to mourn your immortality, and you mourn the fact that you are cosmically not that significant. I mean, you're significant to your loved ones, you're significant to yourself, you're significant perhaps to your job, but in a cosmic sense, we're not that significant. And I say that with a smile on my face, because at this point, you get used to it. You're like, that's just reality. But at first, it's like, there's no way. I am part of a big story, and I want the big story. I want to be significant. I might be humble enough to say I don't want to take God's place. I don't want to take God's glory, but I still want to be part of that story. I want to be part of a divine plan. And that idea, you have to mourn it. You have to grieve, not just what you believed, but the hope that you built your life around. Now you're just an animal with a brain and a consciousness and hormones and instincts and a ticking clock. And the realization that everything you were built to fear or hope for may have simply been a metaphor. That'll rock you to your core. It really will. Especially if you were, as I like to say, in it to win it. Like, you are not a Sunday, you're not a Christmas and Easter kind of Christian. If the doors were open, you were there. Church was not a burden. It was a beautiful blessing to be with the people of God. And when you go on the other side of this, it can feel for a while like real despair. Like nihilism has just moved in and made itself at home. And you have this squatter's grief that's occupying your life and your faithlessness, whispering to you, there's no point. There's no point left. There's no meaning. There's no meaning left. But I would argue that in that mix, eventually something unexpected happens. And for me, honestly, it was fairly quick. And I don't say that with arrogance. I know some people have said they go through a very long grieving process. I was literally laughing within an hour of deconverting, laughing hysterically. Something unexpected happens that in the silence, you realize you're starting to feel things again that you didn't realize were stolen from you. Like, you lost a lot, but it hits you that you'd wasted so much time on something that was not real. But in that process, you now have to grieve what you thought you had but didn't, but you realize as well that something was stolen from you, and you get that back. Everything from emotions that you dismissed, sensations that you maybe muted, and your desires, you focus on them, you let them flourish. Maybe you'd argue that you kind of repressed them or even suffocated them for a while, and you begin to feel the wind in your lungs, and even the weight of your body in the chair, the warmth of your partner's hand, the laughter of your children, the smell of pine trees in the forest. And it becomes this sort of raw, visceral, I think is the right word, raw, visceral, immediate miracle in your mind of like, I am alive. This world does not talk to me. This world does not owe me anything. It doesn't owe me any meaning. But I still feel like there's this miracle of I'm walking, I'm breathing, I'm seeing beauty. I hear music. I see fire. I cry tears. I have an orgasm. I see an ocean. I see a sunrise and a sunset. I see a storm. I hear the beautiful rain. And sort of that impermanence that says, I wanted so much to live forever, and now I'm sad. It kind of takes on a new sacredness. Like there's this focus that happens where you start to realize you thought you needed to be special and linked to something transcendent for the universe to matter and for you to matter. But mattering, if I can use that word, I think that's the right way to say it. Mattering for yourself, at least in your own heart, is not something that happens only when you're connected to something truly transcendent. Because number one, the transcendent may not exist, and I would argue that it probably doesn't. But you begin to feel like just being present is what matters. You need to matter here at your door, at your dining room table, in your bedroom, when you're talking to your children, when you're giving them hugs, good night, when you're walking in nature, when you're shaking someone's hand and patting them on the back. You don't need a divine destiny to lead a meaningful life. You do need a few things. You need to love well. You need to love really well. You need to have a love that transcends the cruelty of this world. You have the ability, the beautiful ability, I would say, to be able to love better than Christians, because Christians arguably are focused primarily on loving out of either fear of what happens if I don't, you're going to get smacked by God. Or if you do it right, then if you love people well, you're going to get applause and, well done, my good and faithful servant. Here, enter into my rest, and here's your crown of jewels. When you just love, knowing it's not out of fear or out of a hope of a reward, you just love because it's what you want to do. That's beautiful. And I would argue that's more beautiful than the Christian motivation, far more beautiful. And you begin to accept the finite and you give it your all, but you don't need eternity to appreciate the present. And maybe even, again, we go back to where I started from, the absence of eternity sort of makes the present sacred. When everything ends, then everything counts. When you can't ever get this moment back. I remember, I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, but there's a movie I would highly, highly recommend it when you're not depressed. When you're not depressed, it'll depress you more if you're depressed. But if you're in a good spirit, you're in a good place. An old Robin Williams movie called What Dreams May Come. What Dreams May Come is one of the most beautiful movies, in my opinion, ever made. And I wish there were more out there like that I could think of. But he basically it's basically the idea that there is like a heaven in his mind. And I know that's kind of, bringing it the other direction, but just bear with me here. What the things that he finds most beautiful in his real life, they become his heaven. And in his world, for example, his wife was a master painter, and she painted just beautiful landscapes of nature. And literally the things that she painted became his heaven. It's just beautiful. There's a lot of nuance to it. And again, I highly recommend it. But when you realize that that's where the beauty is, like the beauty was not something different. The beauty was right there. He had the painting on the wall in his real life, and that painting became his heaven. And in a sense, you need to kind of let your real life, the beauty of your children's eyes, the beauty of just love and friendship and kindness and intimacy, you need to let that become your heaven. The absence of eternity is going to make our present experience more meaningful, more sacred. Again, when everything ends, then everything counts. You'll never get this moment back. And I know that's going through some cliches there. I apologize. But time on this earth is not a test. It's a treasure. It's very limited. It's like, currency where you've only got a few dollars left. This is not a bank account where they're just going to replenish it, with $1,000 every day. You have a limited number of dollars, so use them wisely. You have a limited number of hours, so use them wisely. And we begin to spend them wisely instead of saving it for some promise of someday. We're not above the animals. We are one. We're not higher. We're not lesser. We're intimately connected to the animal world. And instead of that being dehumanizing to me, I eventually let it be grounding. It roots you in the earth, in the story of this earth, of this planet, of the universe, in flesh, in fleshliness, in sort of the symphony of life's fragility. You are part of a great tangled web of life that has been going on for so long and is going to continue long after we're gone. Again, we're carbon and stardust and a heartbeat. You are the sort of improvisation of evolution and all the processes that have been going on. And that's amazing. You're like this temporary arrangement of atoms and, ideas. You know how to sing and how to grieve and how to dance, how to dream. That's amazing. You are like, if you imagine, again, the stardust concept, you become like this living constellation of your experiences. And, we know we'll return to the earth one day. We'll be part of the dirt, but that doesn't make our life meaningless. It makes each moment like a sacrament. Again, I'm borrowing a lot from our old days, but we would have all these sacraments to do. Do this, bow here, cross. Maybe some of you cross like a Catholic thing. Certainly, baptism, the Lord's table. The sacraments were so important to get you to remember the gospel and the core of your relationship with God. And now the core of your relationship is you with yourself. And that makes it beautiful. It ignites it. It makes you feel like, wow, the sacraments are not something I do in some building with some priest. The sacraments are something that I do in my own head, in my own thoughts. And you're like, I haven't been at home in my own body because my real home is going to be in heaven someday. Your home is right here. You are the temple. You're the tabernacle. You're the sacrament. It's urgent. You don't have much time left. Ignite that. Make it precious. Heighten the pulse of it all. Make this moment feel like it's enough. And remember, through it all, we don't need any validation from somewhere else to survive or thrive. And so I light my candles. I've had one lit even today. Mine was one of those green pine ones, Fraser fir. Light your candles, but light your candle metaphorically in your life. Write the poems. I can't write poems fast enough, honestly. Hold your people close, love on them. And we're not waiting for heaven's, day. We're celebrating today. We're celebrating today. And I'll just wrap up this part by saying, you forgive yourself for all the years you wasted effectively chasing heaven. You basically got tricked. I'm sorry to say it that way, but you got tricked, I got tricked, and we tricked other people in turn to say, chase heaven, chase the sun. Just like there's people that at sunset will take a picture and then they'll drive as fast as they can so that the sun is maybe, still up a little bit where it otherwise would have gone down, and they chase the sun so they can get a few more, pictures before the sunset is truly gone. And that's what we were doing. We were just chasing heaven. We were chasing heaven for so long. We were trading our joy for this hope. And we were very silent at times because we just knew, just wait on the Lord. When the time comes, he'll make everything right. And I would argue that you and I are finally alive. We're finally starting to live when we realize that we're not going to live that much longer in the big picture. And I'm not talking about us being old or whatever. I'm 49 this year. So arguably I'm past my halfway point. But I'm not talking about being old. I'm saying in the long stream of the long length of this universe, of how long it's been around, our lives really are a blip on the radar. And if you're not going to start living soon, when are you going to start living? If that's not a good reason to get over the excuses and do what you can. And I don't know if this, I just want to add this one more thing before I go into the next section, or actually I'll go into some comments, but there's a certain time a way in which you need to kind of tell yourself that there's endless ways that life can steal your joy. And I want to use an illustration. I'm sorry, I don't mean to make this about me, but I think this illustrates it. And I'm not saying this to get any sympathy from you. But I remember years ago, I dated this girl. I was here in Georgia. I dated a girl down in Florida. And we met online. And it was great. It was really good. And it felt like that promise, like God says in the Bible, God will restore the years the locusts have eaten. It's like, this is amazing. God has made it. It's like, she's it. She's wonderful. So happy. I'm finally, God, this is a God thing. God did it. And in that process, I would say just every day got better. It was that kind of relationship, like literally every day got better with her. Or so I thought. And I just couldn't wrap my mind around how did I deserve this? This is so amazing. And we'd gotten eventually engaged, and we were down to 1 month before the wedding. And she came here to Georgia. We flew back and forth a lot and drove, but she came here to Georgia to do like the premarital counseling that you typically do. And she told the counselors, like, honestly, Tim treats me so good. He treats me better than my own parents. Like, I've never been treated this well before. He treats me like a princess. He is so good to me. And I can't wait to be his wife. And of course, that's what you're hoping to hear. You're hoping to hear that's the impression you're making because it's what you want. And I couldn't have imagined a better scenario to have been in. And we said goodbye for that visit that weekend, knowing that in about 3.5 weeks, we were going to get married. And about a week later, I come home from work. This was before the days of cell phones being ubiquitous. It was like, some people had flip phones at that point, but it was just sort of taken off. But most of my communication was at home on the home computer at that point. And I come home to an email that just says, I'm ending everything immediately. Do not bother calling. Don't call me. Don't call my family. Don't call my friends. Don't call anybody. It's over immediately. And I was like, is this a joke? It's not a very funny joke, but this is weird. We're getting married. Like, we're literally about to buy, everyone's buying plane tickets. It was not a joke. It was quite serious. And little did I know, the day that she was going to marry me, she married someone else, which of course implies she was certainly double dating, double engaged even, who knows? It was very, very bizarre. And that'll turn your world upside down. That kind of experience will turn your world absolutely upside down. But I got to a point where I had to say to myself, there's this girl out there who is now married to someone else who arguably is happy and not looking back, whether she did the right thing or not, that, just ignoring that part of it. It is over. She is married to someone else. And at that point, you have a choice. You can sit there and grovel forever and say, I can't believe it happened. I can't believe I wasted so much time. I can't believe there's so much pain. Or you can admit that life is too beautiful to let someone who doesn't even care at that point if you're alive or dead, let them take away your joy. Let them keep you from healing and moving on. Let them keep you from finding, love and intimacy again someday. Truly one of the most shocking and disturbing parts of my journey in life. But it taught me a lot about saying, stop trading your time for nothing. You can spend more time on this if you want to, but all you're doing is wasting time, and time is too precious to waste. So I hope that story makes sense as to why I bring that up. But let me read a few quick comments here, and get started. We'll go into the next section. Ryan Scott says, I didn't feel sadness. I felt anger for the loss of my own time and the negative influence that I had upon others. I regretted spending my time on that which was worthless at its most innocent. Yeah, very well said. Very well said. I would agree with that 100%. And I would say I felt, like I needed to do what I could to make things right and to let other people know that this was mythology. Of course, most people are still stuck in it at that point. And they don't want to hear it, but you do your best with those who are willing to talk. But thank you, Brian, for being here. Phil Chandler Arts. Hey, good to see you. I haven't been able to watch for ages. Thank you so much. You actually haven't missed too much in the terms of the live streams. I haven't done them in a while. My schedule's been very, topsy-turvy for a while, but I believe I'm going to be doing them more consistently going forward. So please keep an eye out for them. But I'm so glad you're here again. Good to see you. Yep. Deconversion changes how we read the statements of Jesus in the Bible. If he's not fully divine, Son of God, whose death atones, then who gave him the right to divide our families? Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, and arguably we don't know if there was a guy named Jesus or if it was made up, and we don't know if the things that they said he actually said. When you look at things like the Gospel of Thomas, it makes you wonder, what was made up later that was truly just added to him, put in his mouth. But yeah, assuming the way that he was presented to us, it does make you realize that if this is not real, then why are we letting these things, do so much damage to us? Or the one about, if you're tempted to lust, cut out your eyes or something. It's pretty crazy. Let's see here. Steven says, turn all anger and guilt into researching the truth and just stay positive, then you might feel better. Yeah, absolutely. Amanda says, how do you get over fear? Amanda, if you're still in the comments, if you could clarify, restate that, but clarify what fears you mean. If I'm just going to take a stab, if you mean fear of hell, that's what a lot of people, mean. If you mean fear of hell, I would start with saying two things, and there's a lot more we could say. I'll keep it short here. Number one, research the mythology behind it. When you research Sheol, when you research what ancient other religions like Egypt and Mesopotamia believed about the afterlife, when you research Zoroastrianism, you research the Greco-Roman mystery cults, you're looking at Hades and Gehenna, all that kind of stuff. When you look at this stuff and the words that they use, you realize it really was mythology. The second thing I would say, if you're talking about hell, is to really examine the question of would a loving God send his kids there? And I know we, as Christians, we have all the answers. Of course he would. His holiness, if you understood his white hot holiness, you would not question that. He cannot allow sin and he must punish it. But I would argue if you were to say, if you had kids and you were to say to them, if I were to take a cast iron pan, put a little oil in it and heat that sucker up till it's steaming. If, little Johnny, little Susie, if I were to take your finger, even just like your pinky, and put it in the hot oil, just for 1 second, would I be a good daddy or a bad daddy? Just 1 second. Not even enough to do perhaps permanent damage, just to give you a really big blister on the end of your finger for a week or two. You'd be a bad parent. What if I held your hand in for like a whole 10 seconds? Blisters everywhere. Your skin's falling off. You'd be a really bad parent. We're talking like prison, hopefully for a long time, and never seen your kids again. That's obvious to us as parents. Torture is never, ever, ever appropriate for anybody. And yet God says he created that place to torture people. If you were to think that God is real, then you'd have to admit that he's a psychopath. And you'd have to admit that going to heaven would not be a blessing, it would be a curse. Because intimate time with a psychopath is not heaven. It just, by definition, it can't be. So, but again, if I'm off base on what fears you're referring to, please feel free to clarify. HVAC Dad, thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate that. Man. Thank you for the super chat. It showed me my true values. When I was in the Calvinist church, I had to constantly lie to myself, and they had answers for every reason why you didn't like the doctrine. I hated not being able to speak my mind. Yeah, that is a great point. And I would add to it just that the arrogance, the pride, not just the general vibes of pride, but the specific vibes of we have the correct interpretation, everyone else is way off. We alone glorify God. We alone are exalting his the glories of the gospel, and no one else really is. Everyone else is more into a free will that exalts human abilities to choose. We want to give all the glory to God from start to finish. It's all of him. So we feel like we're arrogant, but then also the arrogance of we're the elect. It's kind of like the nation of Israel. A lot of them with the Zionism, we're the chosen people. You get so hyper arrogant in these systems, and you just can't see past it. It's very sad, very, very sad. And yeah, not being able to speak our minds is it's a big part of it. But I'm so glad you escaped. Thank you again so much for your support. Fear only has power over you if you allow it. Yeah, I mean, for sure, but I mean, there's things that just are so buried so deep. It's hard to take your power back at times. It's a journey. So, but I agree. Ultimately, if we take our autonomy back, we take our thoughts back, then eventually we will be more than conquerors, as they say. Relatable. Calvinism suppressed my conscience and made me emotionally numb. Yeah, it really does, especially when you think to yourself, again, like we talked about earlier, the passages of God can do what he wants with the clay. And, who are you, clay, to, or actually uses the word plasma. It says in Romans 9, will the thing formed say to the one who made it, why did you make me this way? And the word thing formed is literally the word plasma in Greek. Well, the plasma, in your blood, look up at God and give him the finger and say, why'd you do this? Why'd you make me this way? Why'd you make me a vessel of dishonor? And Paul doesn't even answer the question. He just says, who are you to say that to God? God, you're plasma. God can do what he wants. It totally makes you numb. Totally makes God into a monster. Yep, absolutely. Susanna again in the building, representing Scotland. It's time to actually make a bucket list. Always thought. I totally agree. I had eternity to fulfill me, but what a blow to realize my prime was used in the faith, the money not invested, etc. Loss. Yeah, that is a really good point. And so many bucket lists. I feel like, that one of the reasons that I tell people I really wanted to live forever is my bucket list is like a mile long. It's probably more than that. There is no way I would literally spend a couple lifetimes just walking around in nature. I'd spend a couple lifetimes just reading in the library. I'd spend a couple lifetimes just being a woodworker. That's what I did. I grew up in a wood shop building stuff. I'd spend a couple lifetimes just being a painter, a musician. That's just to scratch the surface. So obviously you wouldn't want to do just one thing forever, but mix it up, and eventually you've got lifetimes upon lifetimes, and you're still just scratching the surface. So I totally agree. Reevaluation of your lists, Suzanne, perhaps to match your possibilities. Yeah, we all need to figure out what we can do. But hopefully we will be shocked at the things we can knock off that list and make a lot of good memories with our loved ones. Wow, if pain were water, the world would drown. Yeah, the world is hurting so much right now, so much. That's so sad. I was almost engaged and everything fell through too. Yeah, I'm sorry, Victor. That is hard. That is very hard. It's crazy sometimes the ways that we realize that people aren't anywhere near as safe as we thought they were. I've seen that too many times to count. I mean, and that's something else. It's a separate topic for a separate day, perhaps. But definitely circumstances like that make you realize that you are, like I said this afternoon, you are more alone for many reasons in this life. One of them is that people are much, much, much more untrustworthy than we thought. Very few people actually will be with us through thick and thin. A lot of that in life. Sad. I'm so sorry. Hope you're at a good spot now. Yes, fear of hell. People tell me I will go to hell if I leave religion. Yeah, that's just ask them, like, is that what you would do to your kids? Would you let your kids burn in hell? And also, you got to think about the fact that if heaven is perfect, there's no tears there, right? If it's perfect, then that means that you have to be dancing before God, utterly happy, while you're watching your child burn. How is that okay? How would you be happy seeing your child screaming and alone in the darkness, in a fire? How would you ever be happy? Heaven, by definition, would be hellish in that paradigm. And the fact that Christians can't see it, and I'm one of them, I couldn't see it. The fact that Christians can't see that is very scary. Very scary. Hey, Alex, great to see you here. Thanks so much. I know Yahweh isn't real, but I still fear his judgment at some level. Yeah, I mean, these things, they're in our blood. They go deep. It just takes time. I honestly, I don't know if I did some grieving and processing more in my deconversion process, which was, for me, was about 3 years exactly. When I deconverted, it was like I was done in an hour. I mean, I was fully like, it's all, pardon my language, but it's all just a fucking joke. It's all just fucking mythology. It's not real. And it has nothing to do with reality. It's completely irrelevant. And for me, it was over. I was done in an hour. I didn't look back. I didn't think for 1 second that Yahweh was real or that hell was real. I was just like, oh my gosh, humans duping humans. That's all this has ever been. Dead humans duping live humans. That's all this is. Nothing more. System of control by dead people. But yeah, it's at a certain point, there's certain things for certain people that just those fears are there. I was thinking about the recent Left Behind stuff, the rapture stuff, people claiming the rapture was a few weeks ago. There are days that for some people, it's gonna get you. Dividing the family sounds like a strategy a slave plantation owner would imply to perpetually keep the people under control. Divide and conquer. Yeah, my goodness, it's crazy. The prestige, easy to be the chosen people of a God you created. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, if he made the God up, yeah, you can say whatever. He chose us. He loves us. We're better than you. So listen to us. Absolutely, it's all about power. All about power. Johns Hopkins has shown mystical experiences, a term originally laid down by William James, are ultimately conversion experiences for atheists. I'm not sure exactly what that refers to, but mystical experiences are more likely, in my opinion, just simply chemicals in your brain. I'm not saying they can't be intense. I had a friend a couple of years ago that told me about an experience, with the, not the mushrooms, but the frogs. I don't know what that's called, but did the frog stuff. They just stuck something right through his skin on his shoulder. But he said he went special places, and he said it changed his life. He said it was very spiritual, but it's just frog venom or something. But mystical experiences, I think, are things that either chemicals do to us or our own chemicals in our brain do to us. We're just advanced math. That's all. But consciousness is just advanced. Our brain just got a little bit better than the animals. And what we think of as mystical is just our brains playing tricks on us. I don't think there's anything mystical out there. But just my 2 cents. But there are certainly people that do leave atheism, at least on the surface, or claim they're atheists and they're in religion now. More power to them. If that's really what, like, I don't have a problem with someone saying, I really want to be religious. I'm not trying to stop that. What I'm trying to say is don't trick people into, like, don't tell people they have to believe like you or else you're going to burn. And also don't trick people about where your ideas came from. Because that's what Christianity is basically all about. Let's not tell anybody where this thing came from or how it evolved. Just, there's no wizard behind the curtain. But thank you for your comment. Deconversion changed how I see churches. I used to believe churches were the best and should anchor our lives. Now I see them as evil and feel intense anger and bitterness when I drive by churches. Yeah, I know what you mean. And a lot of stuff that triggers us. I feel like I'm at a point where, a lot of that's dropped, but there are days, there's still certain things that can get me. And it's painful. You got to do what's best for you in terms of what you can take and how long you can take it. Maybe going to certain things like weddings or funerals, even though you wouldn't ordinarily go to church, you got to go for a funeral or a wedding. And, you're going to hear in many churches, they're going to do a wedding plus the gospel, or a funeral. We're going to do the words that, to tell about this guy's life, rest in peace. But by the way, now that we're here, let's talk about your life. Those of you who are still living, are you right with God? And it's hard. It's really hard to deal with, but do what's best to protect your heart. See here, Kafel says it's not frogs, it's toads. Okay, DMT and entheogen, generating the divine within. It's not simply about your brain playing tricks with itself. Yeah, I mean, there are people that are going to, I'm sure, claim that they're having experiences that are divine. Again, I have no problem with it. I personally would not do that at this point in my life for reasons I can go into another time, but I wouldn't touch it myself. But if you're in a safe spot to try it and experiment, I mean, then go for it. I don't feel like I need that right now, but I don't have a problem with someone doing anything they can to feel like they're more in touch with the universe. I just don't want to trick people, especially let's not trick kids and let's not scare kids with this stuff. But thank you for your comment. If it's something you've experienced, again, I'm not doubting it at all. Excuse me. So wanted to go on to the next section. I apologize, my voice is going a little bit. Let me take a quick drink. I think that one of the next things that I want to talk about is how we begin to see during the process of deconversion, and I just touched on this, but I'm going to elaborate. We begin to see the horror of praising and loving the psychopathic character who is Yahweh. When your eyes are open and you have a fresh view for what you've been reading, and you read the Bible and you begin to see not this loving story, but this story of violence. And it's not justice, but it's like a sadism. You realize that what we all used to call this loving relationship with our Heavenly Father and devotion was really just like a form of anesthesia against our inherent human morality. And you realize you were trained to applaud cruelty. You realized I was worshiping the very pathology that I was supposed to fear from other people. If someone's going to come to your door and knock on it, and you look through the little peephole, like, there's a crazy guy out there who's foaming at the mouth and he's got a hammer and he looks like he's, about to attack somebody. You're going to let him in? No, I'm going to keep the door locked and we're going to call the police. The psychopathic nature of that person on the other side of the door teaches you you're not safe anymore. You better be afraid and you better run. You better protect yourself. And yet that's what you're taught to love in the Yahweh character. And I've said this before, and I'll probably weave it in a little bit throughout these presentations, but this is the specific point, ironically, that actually got my deconversion kickstarted. I was teaching the kids, the songs that you do, teach them to love the Lord. In many ways, at that age, they're too bored to sit down and hear a story. They're not able to focus, but the one thing kids love is to sing and dance. And so we would sing all these songs, Jesus loves me, this I know, the Bible, Jesus loves little children, and all these songs. And one of them was Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho, which is a story of the conquest of Canaan. It's a silly little song, but when you look at it in depth and you also look at the context of what happens next in the story, you realize this is a story of genocide and land theft and a whole bunch of other things. And that was the first time in my life that I realized, I don't know if I'm comfortable teaching this to my children. I'm going to teach my kids to defend genocide? Really? Is that really where this is going? And it's kind of like it's the place in your story where you feel like you're waking up in a horror movie. Like you're halfway through it. You're waking up inside of a horror movie and you realize that the hero that you were cheering for is actually the villain. Have you ever seen movies like that where they kind of switch at the last minute? I love those where they really get you. I remember different kind, like M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. I won't know spoiler alerts if you haven't seen it, but somewhere around 3/4 of the movie, 80% of the movie's over, something switches and you're like, oh wait, that's different than it's not what I thought I was watching. Nicole Kidman, The Others. That again, very, very, very end of it, it shifts and you're like, the whole movie I was watching, it's a different movie now. That's crazy. That was a twist I didn't see coming. You realize that you're looking for this hero in the story, and the hero is the villain. And it's like, it takes you a minute. It shouldn't take you a minute. It should be immediate. But it's like this slow motion recognition that you've been defending the abuser. You've been reciting all these justifications, saying this is why it's good, this is why it's important, this is why it has to be this way. And when you're in the Christian bubble, Yahweh is always by definition good. That's the framework of it. No matter what he does, he can flood the earth and drown his children. It's justice. He's a good God. He can order the slaughter of entire tribes, of women, of infants, of livestock. His righteousness is on display. He can demand constant worship and express jealousy and threaten eternal torture. It's his holiness. And so you see omnipotence as virtue, basically might makes right on steroids. And even when it's like just totally smothered in violence, you end up basically saying God's sovereignty allows him to be a tyrant, and that's okay. And you just rationalize it all day long. You had to. The Bible was infallible to us. Questioning God's morality, it wasn't even like it was a sin. It was just not an option. It wasn't like, don't go there. It was like, that's not even somewhere you'd think to go to. That God is good. God is good all the time. God is good. And while as we're reciting this, we're twisting ourselves into theological pretzels, trying to make genocide sound loving. We were doing moral gymnastics every Sunday, and we turned off our empathy. And I think that's one of the saddest parts about this is it really turns us, as I've said many times, into monsters. When you believe monstrous thoughts long enough, it turns you into a monster, because this probably in some ways originated culturally with this desire to say, how do we defend? I mean, I would argue back then they didn't value life in the same way we do, but how do you defend murdering babies? How do you defend murdering children? Well, the only way you can really do it and have some kind of decent life, I guess, maybe they would argue, is to say, well, God made me do it. And I guess those people tricked themselves into thinking that this was really, really, really real. And therefore they justified it to themselves. But, I've often thought to myself, I thought this a lot, at least when I was deconverting, imagine if those stories were real in the Bible. And I don't know that many of them are real, but imagine for a second the stories of genocide, where God says to the people, go in, slaughter everybody, and take over the land. And you think that, back then people didn't live as long. So the soldiers were probably like 15 to 20, max. We're not talking about, someone that's old and lived a long life and is mature. We're talking about kids. We're talking about teenagers, maybe even younger than that, 12-year-olds. Who knows? But certainly mixed in at young teenagers fighting and killing women and children and babies. And to think that if God demanded that, number one, that itself is so sick. But number two, you now have, as the soldier, you would have those memories for the rest of your life of all the people that you slaughtered, all the innocent people that you tortured. That's what your God wants to put in your head, the memories of the people that you slaughtered. That God is a psychopath. And you can call it anything you want all day long. At the end of the day, it's just absolute cruelty and violence. And we have to admit, they gaslit us the whole time. They just gaslit us till we said, yeah, you're right, God is good. There's an inner voice that says this isn't right. I remember on Star Wars, I don't watch it too much, but you remember the I forget which one it was called, but the first one with Kylo Ren, but The Force Awakens maybe. But in the beginning of that, you have Kylo Ren giving his stormtroopers the command to slaughter this village. And one of them, who becomes the main character in the Resistance, he ends up just not doing it. He's like, I can't slaughter this village. And there's something in his head that just says, this isn't right. And there's something beautiful in our hearts when we say, this book isn't right. There's something sick about this book. You got to stop saying, and this is what you say to yourself, you got to stop saying to yourself, his ways are higher than our ways. Or God is just and we just can't understand it. God gives and takes away, and the Lord disciplines those he loves. And look what he did to Job. Isn't that good? Every time we repeat those crazy cliches, our cognitive dissonance just kind of got hardened. And when you, again, get to the other side of this, which is what this is about, and the veil lifts and the scales fall from your eyes, you read the scriptures with unfiltered eyes. And honestly, you start to feel sick. You feel physically sick. You feel emotionally, psychologically nauseated, because you remember what your mind was taught to suppress, and you suddenly see it all. The obsession with blood, the need for dominance, the emotional volatility of this character, the narcissism, the extreme misogyny, the cruelty that's, again, masked as love, these trauma cycles that are part of the covenant, the violence. And you realize Yahweh doesn't love people. He controls them. He uses them. He sacrifices them. He makes you sacrifice them if he were real. He demands trust without any transparency about what he's doing. And he's demanding devotion and submission and calling it some kind of weird, sick intimacy. And what kind of intimacy can you really have with a psychopath? We see how he gaslit Job. We see the mind games he played with Pharaoh. We see how he orchestrated this cosmic drama of all eternity where he makes the rules, and you get to the Garden of Eden and he makes the rules, and then he sets you up to break them, and then he makes you pay for it. He sets the whole thing up, and sort of says, I've set you up to fail, and then once you fail, I'm going to whack you for it, and I demand blood to fix it. This is the psychology of an abuser. Create the harm and then offer some kind of rescue as proof of your love. Harm them and then show how you're the rescuer. I mean, do you remember in church singing songs like He's a Good, Good Father? And now it's like our stomach turns, because now all you can see is abuse. And it's like a spiritual Stockholm syndrome that convinced us it's your fault when you're hurting, or it's love when you're punished. Love should hurt. And that, of course, included both God doing something to you, but also your parents getting the belt out and whacking you. It's grace when he saves you from the torment that he created. It's humility to thank him for the suffering that he caused in your life, because that suffering caused you to turn your eyes more on him. And it's a form of worship to silence your intuition, especially about morality. And suddenly on this side, it all clicks. You weren't worshiping a God. You were just stuck in a toxic relationship with a projection of divine authority that resembles every abusive father, every tyrannical boss, every manipulative pastor you've ever known. You were just reenacting the trauma of power. That's all it was. And the horror is in all that, but it's not just in what Yahweh did. It's that you and I were trained so thoroughly to praise it, to sing about it and thank him for it. Literally thank him for being an abuser. Thank you for electing some people to heaven and electing some people to hell. Thank you, God. This is the definition of love. You and I evangelized our own oppression. We became missionaries of gaslighting. And when you deconvert, that'll wreck you a little bit. You realize, wow, why couldn't I see that? The theology, but also the conditioning. It taught me to effectively betray my own humanity, my own empathy. And it replaced critical thought with all these fears, this reverence. It taught me to doubt my conscience and trust the text. Trust the text. Your moral conscience got overwritten by verses about stoning people. You were taught, effectively, I was taught to surrender to cruelty. And now we see. Once we were blind, but now we see. And see here, do we have a troll? One second. Bear with me one second. I think I have taken care of it, but okay, sorry about that. I think I've taken care of the trolls. I'm sorry about that. If there's more, let me know. But, when we see that, it's liberating, but it's devastating, because it's the collapse of the illusion, of course, but it's also, in a beautiful sense, it's the rebirth of our conscience. And you stop calling abuse something good. This is about control, not protection. And you reclaim your right to define goodness without scriptural input. You say, what is goodness? Well, it's taking care of my neighbor. Which neighbor? All of them. Well, Jesus said that. Yeah, but Jesus and Yahweh are the same according to Christianity, and Yahweh says to slaughter all kinds of people. So which way is it? It sounds like we got a couple religions, based on the idea of slaughter. And you can try to reclaim it later with a little bit from the Sermon on the Mount, but ultimately God says that Jesus says that he comes to fulfill the Old Testament, not to destroy it, and he comes to bring a sword to divide people. So Christianity doesn't redeem it. Ancient Judaism certainly establishes the cruelty, and you get a chance on this side of it to build a moral framework that is rooted in beautiful things that are different, like compassion, like consent, and truth, not through coercion, no more. And you get a chance, at least a little bit of a chance, an opportunity to understand what healthy love looks like. And I would argue too, for a lot of us, our relationships were in many ways screwed around with, and our human relationships were screwed around with because we defined love through the lens of this abusive psychopathic God for so long. When you say an abuser is the definition of love in your mind for decades, and then you go look for a spouse, you're going to have some whacked ideas about what that relationship should look like and what makes it healthy, you know? And eventually, I'm going to wrap this part up here and then go to some comments, and then we'll just do one last section a little bit faster. But, eventually you say, if this is God, and thankfully I can see through the mythology that this is not God, but if this is God, or if this were God, I would want nothing to do with him. And that's beautiful. That's not being rebellious against Christianity. That's you resurrecting your own life. That's the beginning of your moral resurrection. And that's the beginning of you reclaiming your humanity. It's a beautiful part of the process. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to go to comments real quick, and then I'm going to just do one last section, then we'll wrap it up for tonight. Let's see here. I need to go back and figure out where I left off. Steve asks, will I have an update on the Enoch project soon? I have already done it. It's basically done. I'm looking to hire some academics to edit it, proofread it, and guide me. Academics that do cost per hour. I'm not going to release it until I have that at the moment because of my situation. That's not remotely an option. We're talking about quite a bit of money. It'll happen. I will continue to work on it behind the scenes and edit it, make it cleaner and cleaner. But I would recommend in the meantime that anyone that can dig into Enoch, that you do it. From my count, it's about 200 times it's quoted in the New Testament. So it's amazing how much when you don't know, you don't know. Crazy stuff. Restored members, check out my work on circumcision. Okay. Thanks, restored members. Yeah, for anyone that doesn't think about circumcision much, I highly recommend you do. That's one of the most bizarre parts of the fact of what we would do to babies, and very, very sad. I'm thankful that I didn't do it to my boys. I'm very, very glad. I didn't do it even as a Christian, but it's amazing to think that we ever thought that was appropriate. Susanna says, Richard Dawkins adequately describes God in one of his books about the psychopathic character with many negative descriptions. Yeah, that is great book, great descriptions he has there. Have to admit, I did defend, yet now looking from this side was really not defendable. Yeah, exactly. Not at all. Listening to you talk, it's amazing how all the terminology stays with you, not just the stories, but the way we use certain dialogue, and it's still passed to the next generations. Yeah, it is crazy. You don't really lose it. You refine it a little bit, but it's still there underneath like lava. Late night HVAC again. Literally, Sproul said we would look down from heaven and see our grandma and be praising that God's justice was being worked out. Yeah, it's insane. This is effectively a religion that teaches you how to be cruel, how to be a psychopath yourself, and how to be okay with it. Not for me anymore. Not for me. Yeah, feeds a lot of families. It's insane. I think we got rid of Hans. Yeah. This whole God murders baby rap just seems like a very naive interpretation of religion, describing God as though he were literally some anthropomorphic entity and we're all his Stockholm hostages. I'm sorry, Kafel. I'm not sure if I'm following. I'm just going to keep moving here for the sake of time. Yeah. Yeah, we definitely want to care for oppressed groups. This channel is going to be safe. That's my only regret for my beliefs and uninformed told falsehoods. Yeah, we definitely, we shouldn't have passed it on. That's one of the craziest things about it is that they get you so early that you just, you do it because it's just what you do. Kids and teenagers should not be telling anybody what to believe. You haven't even started life yet. Ryan Scott says, I was taught that faith it was a virtue. It took around 35 years, but I finally learned that faith is intellectual dishonesty. Yeah, very, very well said. It really is. It really is. Let's see here. Let's see here. So Emily says, power is in the blood. Hey, Emily, good to see you here. If you could clarify exactly what you meant by that. I'm not sure if you're being sarcastic. I'm guessing you're being sarcastic. But let's see here. Turn the other cheek verse made me endure abuse for years because I thought I had to. Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing here that the stuff you're taught to do, forgive even if they haven't, stop the abuse. Just forgive them because God's forgiven you the whole universe. How can you not forgive them this little thing? So many cliches like that just hurt us so much. Anyway, I'm going to go to my last section here for tonight, and I'm going to try to look out as well for any trolls here. I think there's a couple that I may need to remove, but we'll see. But the last thing I want to talk about tonight is how our deconstruction helps us to reclaim our identity outside of the Christian narrative. When you realize that you are no longer defined by sin and shame and sanctification, you begin to discover who you actually are. You had this whole definition of you are this. You're a sinner, saved by grace, headed to heaven, relationship with God. His death and resurrection is your absolute everything. It's your claim to security and the future. When all that drops, what you love, what you fear, what you desire, your whole identity, it stops being prescribed for you, and you start to become an explorer. You realize you were sort of in the shadows of obedience, and you're emerging from this cave, and there's this full spectrum of who you're becoming. It's one of the strangest transitions. When you leave Christianity, you're stopping your belief in a God. You just don't see the evidence there anymore. But you stop living in this mask that basically was like trying to shape you and form you. This was someone else's story. Someone else made this up, but they tried to make it your story. And when you take the mask off, you realize it never really fit. I was never allowed to be who I wanted to be, and you stop doing it. And it feels at first like a free fall. Like if this mask isn't my real life, what's left? And that's the insanity of this. 1 second here. So I think we had a troll there. That's the insanity of this, is that they trick you into thinking if you don't have this, then you have nothing. You have no life. And at first, again, it feels like you're in a bit of a free fall, but you realize that your identity was stolen from you. You were entirely defined by this thing. You were entirely defined by the faith. You were a Christ follower. You were a prayer warrior. You were a witness. You were a vessel. You were a servant. You were a broken sinner saved by grace. All these titles, they were roles in someone else's script. It was like someone else's play. And they asked you to be an actor in their play. And every part of you got into that so much. You're like, this isn't an act. This isn't a play. This is real life. And you played your part so well through this lens. Everything, your thoughts, your desires, your personality, it was all molded into these archetypes, these templates, these holy templates. We were told what to think, how to behave. 1 second here. We were taught what to think, how to behave, what to wear, what not to wear, who to marry, who to vote for, what your purpose was. And if you ever left that mold, you were being rebellious. And when the structure falls and the theology around you crumbles and the worldview shifts, you feel like you're kind of standing in front of a mirror now asking, who am I without this costume? Maybe that's an appropriate way to put it now that we're almost at Halloween. But who am I without this costume? And at first, the answer is pretty much, I don't know who I am. Because everything that used to be made for you was like this pre-approved stuff. You wore someone else's thoughts, like your clothes. That was your clothing. It was someone else's ideas. You were in a template. You were shaped and molded. And then when it shifts, it's like you're excavating, like you're pulling the trash out, and you're so like a garden maybe is a good illustration. You're gardening and you're planting new things. You're planting questions. You're planting beautiful flowers. You're starting to try on different ideas that used to be off limits to you. You let yourself maybe be angry, and you don't confess this. You're like, I don't have to confess it. I'm allowed to be angry. I can let my anger live and not think I'm offending God. You maybe explore your sexuality and you don't repent for it. You have an orgasm where you masturbate for the first time. You're like, wow, like there's no shame in that. It's just perfectly fine. And you begin to question your morals, and you don't go to Bible verses to determine what's right or wrong anymore. You build your ethics from experience. I mean, not from some, one second. You build your ethics from an experience, not from the edicts of your pastor. And you ask yourself, what do you actually want? Not what you're told you want or should want, but what do you actually want in your life, in your mind? What's beautiful to you? What's life all about? And that is terrifying to some of us, because that freedom has like this effect of like these echoes of guilt. It's thrilling. It's like you're meeting yourself, you're meeting your new self instead of someone else's version of you. But it's so messy. It's not clean or tidy at all. It's a raw rebirth. I was there for all 4 of my babies being born, and it's messy. And this is a raw experience of your second birth, and it's messy, but you're finally unmasked. And excuse me, you might go a little crazy. You might find that you might need to dye your hair, or get a tattoo, or travel somewhere, go to therapy, read books that you didn't think you should read before, or books that are banned. You might explore a relationship that once terrified you. You might watch movies that you would never let yourself watch before. It's not like you're trying to rebel as if that's the goal. It's not. But freedom is. You're choosing life. One second here. You're choosing life. You're choosing to say, I do have a legacy, and it's not a Christian legacy. The legacy is me. And you're not meant to spend your life occupying your mind with, what do other people want of me? So much of this healing is just saying, I was spending all my life living by someone else's expectations. That's all this was. Everyone had expectations, and they had the authority and the power to put me in my place and to discipline me, etc., to take things away from me from my earliest days as a child all the way up through, teenage years, adult years. It's all expectations. And you realize the only expectation that matters at this point is yours. You're not a sheep anymore. You're not a soldier in the Lord's army. You are free for the first time to define yourself, to do human things, to say, this is the way my story is going to go. It can be wild. It can be crazy. And you start to feel pride, I think, in who you are, without apologizing for it at all. You just stop hiding your brilliance. Like you say, I'm an amazing human. My mind is amazing. My poetry is amazing. My sexuality is amazing. My desires are amazing. My love of life is amazing. My love for people is amazing. I can just celebrate me. And that's what I invite you to. Celebrate yourself. It's time to stop letting them shrink our minds into their mold. And you and I have beautiful, beautiful, beautiful lights to shine, candles, as it were, to shine in the dark. And I encourage you, and I encourage myself on this all the time, don't let it go dim. It's so easy in the hardships of life, in the negativity, in all the different things that we face that are difficult to say, I just feel so beaten down. And I'll admit, right now, tonight, I feel beaten down. My life in general feels beaten down. But I'll tell you, I'm going to do my best to shine my candles as long as I can, as hard as I can, as bright as I can. And for sure, I'm going to stop trying to justify my existence. I'm just going to exist and dance and love and let that just flourish. And I'm going to rest. That's how we reclaim our lives. It doesn't have to always be loud and fast and on everybody's radar, but it is deep. It's personal, and it's fierce, and it's real. It's profound. It's who you are on the inside, and you learn to speak your truth, and you learn to choose your own path, and you learn to name things for what they were, both the abuse of the past as well as you get to name the things that are part of who you are that you just didn't explore before, and you rewrite the story. I mean, that's what's beautiful about this, is you're rewriting your story. You're saying, my story is a beautiful book, and Christianity had the first 10 chapters. The next 10 or 20, 30 chapters are mine. I'm rewriting my story. And it doesn't end just because the first 10 chapters ended. And the next chapters are going to be ones that I pick. And again, to borrow the metaphors, this is your resurrection. The closest you will ever come to resurrection or to being born again is deconversion. Your life has started a second time. And once you get to that point, that's the most important thing in the world, is starting your life over. So many of those weird expectations of Christians drop. So much of your old fears, like we talked about fear of hell, the fears drop. And you simply see yourself as, I'm a human in time and space for a very brief time, and I get to live my life, but I will end up effectively wasting my precious few moments if all I do is just stay stuck in the muck and the mire of Christianity. If I'm going to live it all, I'm not talking about living like, oh, you want to go out and sin. I'm not talking about anything like that. I'm talking about just enjoying who you really are and learning who you are, reclaiming your identity. When you do that, you are born again. Your life absolutely will take a turn. And after you heal for a while, after you hurt for a while, you will hurt. But at a certain point, you will get stable. And at a certain point, I see a comment on this out of my corner of my eye about Harry Potter. At a certain point, it just clicks. It just clicks. And like we say on this channel, once you see it, you cannot see it. You'll never go back. You'll never let someone else control your mind again. So I'm going to go through a few quick comments here, and then we'll call it a night. I apologize for my voice. I wanted to, maybe go a little bit longer. That's what he said. But I definitely don't like coughing down the mic, so I apologize again for that. See here. Emily says, been catching up on your interviews. You're amazing. Thank you so much, Emily. Really appreciate your support so much. Thank you to all of you for being a part of this journey. And by the way, I've got some great interviews recently, some great interviews coming up. So please keep watching. Great stuff. Amazing, the people. And I'm going to be putting together a sign-up sheet soon. So for anybody that's like sitting in the background thinking, I'm not sure, do I wait till he reaches out to me? Do I reach out to him? I'm going to put a sign-up sheet soon, and just it'll help us figure out if we're a good fit. And I'm looking forward to having it ready soon, hopefully in a few days. And once you see it, feel free, if it's been something you've been on the fence about doing, please feel free to reach out and see if you want to fill that out. Yeah, it's just like a Google form, and see if you want to get on the channel, share your story. Suzanne again says, no freedom within Christianity when told that within your shackles we're gone, when in fact change in every single direction. Yeah, you're told this is freedom, and that's exactly when they've got you. The moment you're in the biggest freedom, according to them, is when you're actually in the biggest chains. The exploration is the fun and scary part. I found myself going to anime fests in my mid-30s. Okay, very cool. Yeah, whatever it takes to start to figure out who you are now. It's awesome. Lots of freedom outside to explore. And yes, I've enjoyed a few or more of what you listed. That's awesome. F cultural religion. Yeah, it's amazing what it does to us. I can embrace Harry Potter now. Yes. It's amazing how Harry Potter was like, don't do it because it's all magic and, warlocks and whatever. There's all kinds of stuff woven in the New Testament and the Old Testament as well. That stuff is there. I mean, there's the witch at Endor conjuring up. Was it? Forget who she was conjuring up, but conjuring up, was it Samuel? You got witches. Talking donkeys. You got all kinds of magic stuff going on when you really look at it. And there's actually more going on behind the scenes when you look at it from a mystical, sort of Gnostic sense. It's crazy. Religion stops you from realizing there's niches, room for creativity, and ways to see ourselves as part of many wholes. Yeah, absolutely. There's such a beautiful story. I love it. Honestly, for me, I know I've said this before many times, but it will always take my breath away to look up at the night sky. I will never get enough of that. I wish that I lived out where there's no light interference and I could just stare at the sky all night. I would. It's beautiful stuff. Eat chicken, wake up, pray, fart, dry baiting. Thank you, Stephen. Really appreciate your support so much. Yeah, let's talk about it for sure. We'll talk about behind the scenes. Chicken licking. Always refreshing to hear this. I'm glad I was able to catch you. Thank you so much, Phil. Really appreciate you being here. Thanks for doing what you do. Some of your interviews helped me to accept that I was no longer a Christian to finally say it. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. And if you do ever want to reach out to be on the channel, please feel free. You don't have to wait for the sign-up sheet I talked about. I'm on Facebook. My handle is Harmonic Tim. Feel free to add me there if we're not already friends, and let me know you're thinking about doing an interview if that's something you want to consider. And first-time viewer, going to subscribe. Thank you so much. I've spent time around Pangburn, ACD, and the line. Some of the center-left politics spaces. Glad to be here to meet you, Tim. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. Thank you so much for being here. Well, just want to mention, I'm going to be on tomorrow. I'm going to, fingers crossed, be on tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Keep that in mind for those of you in Europe. If your time change has already occurred, ours occurs here this Saturday night into Sunday. But 11 a.m. U.S. Eastern time tomorrow is my goal to be on. And tomorrow evening I would be on, but I'm doing an interview with someone in New Zealand. It's funny how the time zones work. I'll be doing the interview with them around this time tomorrow, but it's going to be their next morning. Like it's my Wednesday night, their Thursday morning. Funny how that works, but sometimes you got to figure out the best time zone. But I will be on most likely twice on Thursday, and then I'll be on again on Friday night. So if you can, look at the channel for the live section, and there's a way to sign up to say, alert me when he goes live, and I'd love to have you on. And do want to mention one other thing. On Saturday the 8th of November, unless something changes between now and then, Saturday the 8th of November in the evening, I'm going to aim for like 5 p.m. We're going to do another poetry slam. So for those of you that write deconversion poetry or reclaiming your life poetry, whatever, anything that relates to the experience of leaving Christianity, reclaiming your life after religion, if you have a poem regarding it and about the beauty of it all, please do let me know. I'm going to be sending out a sign-up sheet soon. Would love to have you on the Poetry Slam. It's so beautiful to see the work where you literally will just come on the screen for whatever 3, 4, 5 minutes. Introduce yourself. Tell us what caused you to write the poetry, or just give us a 30-second overview of your story. Then read your poetry, and then maybe just wrap up with a quick word about what that means to you. So 3, 4, 5 minutes per person. We'll keep it moving. But if you have some poetry to share, please consider signing up for that. I'd love to have you on. Again, Saturday the 8th around 5 or 6 p.m. Thank you all so much. Appreciate you being part of my community, my life. You are the best, better than all the rest. I'll see you all soon. Have a great night.